To start with, I don't play the game in my job. I work in the office. I hate the administration of the FAS. Consists of about 80 staff, and I look after the running of the operations. I look after strategizing what we do, how we get our teams to play well, to get results. We also look after the marketing of the sport. How do we get more people to play the sport so that in the long term it helps us in able to scout best players for the game. So basically I'm the leader of the organization. I'm the chief executive of FAS, and there are chief executives of every football association in every country as well. So I'm the one for Singapore. Football is a sport, and just like any other sport, you need a plan to be able to get to the objective of winning matches. In sports, well, it is normal to lose. You also want to be able to win. So you need to strategize. How do you get to that place? And in order to do that, you need a long-term plan. And you start with very young kids playing the game or introducing the sport to the game. And then how do you scout? How do you get them to develop themselves to the extent where they are competitive in international football? And FAS mainly is judged on how we play in international games. So that's what we do in strategizing. So it encompasses the marketing of the sport, encompasses how accessible the sport is to kids, to the general public, and the kind of games you play in order to help them develop themselves. So that's what we do in strategizing. And lastly, of course, how do we monetize the game? In every sport, you need funding, you need money, you need resources to be able to develop. And we also do that in trying to monetize our game. And that's what we do when it comes to strategic planning. I came out of my university, and I actually worked on a shipyard. And like I said, when people hear you worked in a shipyard, I didn't work on a ship. I worked in the administration of shipyard, in the shipyard industry. And it was by chance there was a position in the sports industry that came about that I applied for. It's got again nothing to do about me playing the sport, but it was about some finance bit about sports that I applied for, and I got the job. And when I got that job, I got introduced to the administration of sport. And just like many of the students who are watching this, I didn't know how much work goes beyond the sport. All we see is people playing the sport, whether it's football, basketball, or netball. But then I realized how much of an administration work that goes beyond, and I got very interested in that. I did my own research, and I applied for a job in football, and I did a couple of jobs within the football administration. In fact, I started off doing strategic planning for FAS before I was appointed as the General Secretary. So there's always multiple pathways to get there, not necessarily you need to do a sports degree or play the sports. Well, contrary to belief, you don't necessarily need to do a sports degree or sports management degree. It's not a requirement. I didn't do one. I did a generic business degree, and I also did my MBA, which is a generic business administration. But sport has evolved, where if you want to work in sports administration, you need all the skill sets that a business degree will give you, what you will learn in a business degree. Of course, having a passion for the sport or passion for sports in general will be helpful. And I always consider myself lucky that I'm in a sport that I like. I used to play the game socially, and I can say that I get paid for what I love doing. Football especially requires many skill sets. Even within the technical side, it requires a psychologist, for example, it requires a sports scientist, for example, it requires a marketer, and especially now in social media, in the context of social media, football relies a lot on social media experts as well in wanting to put across their messages of watching the World Cup. I think not just for someone who works in football or works in sport, for anyone, I think the World Cup is the biggest football show in the world. And I did manage to catch the opening game of the Russia World Cup, which was the first World Cup ever since my appointment. That was my biggest highlight because I, not just watching the game, but before that I managed to also see what goes on behind the scenes. And it was, like I said, it's a continuous learning journey and how we try to apply back to Singapore when we organize events and matches. That's my one of my biggest highlights. My second highlight would be the fact that we managed to, through football, to help the less advantaged in Singapore. We did a charity game. As this was during COVID, actually. When COVID hit us in April 2020, we managed to do a charity game. There were no fans because of COVID, but we had so much proceeds that came through from people who were donating. We put that game online, and for anyone to watch, you need to pay a certain a small fee, and all that fee went to a disadvantaged families and kids. And the highlight was when we went to present that proceeds to that group of people, and the smile on their face, and I think that's priceless. Of course, just be genuine, sincere, and show to people that you can be the leader of the organization, but you also want to be a learning personnel of the organization. And I've continuously learned from my staff, from my colleagues, because they are all experts in their own field, and I'm not the expert in their field, and I've always given that message to my colleagues that we are all in here as a team to learn, and we can learn from one another. I think I grew up thinking that winning is the only thing that matters, and I wished that I was open to the fact that losing is also a way of learning. Losing is also a way of winning, because while you don't win on the result, you win in many aspects of knowing what went wrong, knowing what is it that you have not done enough, and that you will be able to do that extra bit in the next one. And I think that's something that I hoped I had, it was made known to me way earlier, because for the longest time I thought winning is the only thing that matters.